Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. Today, our topic is on rescuing food in our community, and we have our partners over at Food Rescue US Columbus joining us today to tell us more about how we can all get involved, whether we're from the food donor, we're looking to become an agency to receive the food, or we're a volunteer that's hoping to get involved rescuing the food and keeping it out of the local landfills. My name is Amy Densborn. I'm SWACO's education specialist. Today I have the site directors from the Food Rescue US Columbus chapter. I have Emily and Susan with us today, and they're going to be speaking here shortly about how we can all get involved and to help rescue food and to feed hungry members of our community. I did briefly want to provide a quick overview about Food Rescue US and some of the great work that they're doing. The local chapter here in Columbus, Ohio just celebrated their 9th birthday, so happy birthday. And so far, they've been able to provide 9.9 million meals to the food insecure in our community and divert over 13 million pounds of food from landfills. That is no small feat, and we're really excited about the impact that they're having and learning more about it and how we can all contribute to their mission to help fight hunger. So a couple housekeeping tips for everyone as we go through the GoToWebinar platform. Couple things I want to call to your attention. There is this sort of snowflake icon. It's the blue icon that you see on your screen. If your screen disappears or is minimized at any point in time during the session, click on that snowflake icon and that will expand the window so you can view it. It should be down in your toolbar. And then there's also a control panel that you see that has an orange arrow on the top. Your toolbar, if it does minimize, you want to click on that orange arrow. And the orange arrow will allow you to see all the different options within the control panel. So for example, the couple two features that will be helpful to you today. Everyone is on mute throughout the duration of today's webinar. That's just to help control some background noise. But we will be taking everyone's questions and answering those at the end of today's presentation. So I encourage you throughout the presentation today, if something pops into your mind, to please type it into the questions and chat box, and we'll be answering those at the end. There also are a couple handouts from today's educational session. One of them is the slides from today's PowerPoint. And then the two other ones are from Food Rescue US. One is an FAQ on how to become a volunteer, and the other one is how to become a food donor. So those will be available throughout the webinar. Double click on them. They should automatically download to your desktop. If you, for some reason, are having troubles navigating and downloading the handouts, don't worry about it. You can always email me afterwards, and I'll be happy to send those your way in an email. So before we dive into the content of today's session, I did want to briefly provide you with an overview of who we are at SWACO and what we do for Franklin County. So SWACO manages the waste stream for Central Ohio, and we strive to make our region a leader in environmental sustainability by offering a range of services and programs on recycling household hazardous waste, household materials, e-waste as well. We offer community grants to schools, nonprofits, and other community partners. We also offer yard waste diversion programs and food waste programs. And then we do educational talks on the importance of recycling, food waste diversion, as well as landfill tours. Now, this is an extensive list of all the services and programs that SWACO provides. I'd encourage you to check out swaco.org to learn more. So just to provide a quick snapshot of the waste stream here in Franklin County, even though more waste is making its way to the landfill each year, Our rates of recycling and composting are increasing yearly. And the even better news is that more and more material is being diverted through reuse, recycling, and composting. So our diversion rate right now is about 50%. So what that means is about 50% of all the materials that we generate as a community are being diverted from the landfill through reuse, recycling, or composting. That's really impressive considering the national average is right about 34%. We have some of the highest diversion rates in the Midwest, the second highest behind Minneapolis, Minnesota. As a community, residents and businesses alike, we are creating more waste every single year. Central Ohio has been experiencing population growth and a booming economy. As more people move to Columbus, Ohio, more of that waste does end up in our local landfill. From a recent waste audit, which basically just tells you the types of materials that are being thrown away in our community, we discovered that about 76% of the materials that make their way to the Franklin County Sanitary Landfill could have been reused, recycled, or composted. And so this is going to be materials such as compostable materials like food scraps and yard waste. We'll talk more about that. Recyclable materials like cardboard and aluminum cans. And then other recoverable materials such as your durable goods, your mattresses, your furniture, and your textiles. You may even be surprised to see that food waste is the #1 contributor by weight in the Franklin County Sanitary Landfill. So it makes up about 15% of the total waste stream. We have an amazing opportunity to increase recovery of these materials through increased access and education. In order to address the concerning issue of food waste in our community, SWACO and the Central Ohio Food Waste Initiative came together to create the Save More Than Food campaign. This is an awareness campaign dedicated to sharing the impact that food waste has on the health of our community, economy, and our environment. If you're looking for some tips or tricks on how to prevent, reduce, and recycle food waste at your home or in your daily life, I encourage you to check out SaveMoreThanFood.org. All right, so now it's time for our trivia question for the day. I'm going to go ahead and launch this poll. And if I could get everyone to select the answer that they think is most appropriate. So the question is today, if all of the potential meals that are landfilled each year in Central Ohio were recovered before the food went to waste and were instead made into meals, we would have enough to provide every meal missed by Central Ohio residents. Is that true or false? Looks like I have about 50% of people's votes in, so I'm going to give it a couple more seconds, then I'm going to close it out. All right, the answer is true, absolutely. That is absolutely true. So think about that. Think about all the meals that are circulating in our community. If we could get those rescued and we could get those into the hands of hungry members of our community, the impact that we could truly have to help fight hunger. And why is this so important? Let me get out of this real quick. With nearly 1 million pounds of food waste being landfilled each day in Central Ohio, it is more important than ever that we do our part to reduce food waste in our community. This isn't just an issue in Central Ohio either. And Emily and Susan are going to tell us more about those, more about the issues across the nation. More than 40% of the food that is produced in our country goes to waste. When food goes to waste, so does all of the time, the money, and the resources that went into producing and distributing that food. And as many of us already know, wasting food also hurts the environment. When thrown into the landfill, Food waste produces greenhouse gases. This is a byproduct from the decomposition of organic materials. This is called landfill gas. It's comprised of carbon dioxide and methane gas, both of which are powerful greenhouse gases. Even though SWECO does have a gas management system in place to help capture that landfill gas and prevent it from going into the atmosphere, it is always preferred to rescue the food to feed hungry members of our community, and if it's not edible for humans, to turn it into nutrient-rich compost. When food is landfilled instead of eaten, we lose all the natural resources, the money, and the opportunity to feed hungry members of our community. There are many different stats on this slide. I'm not going to go over all of them. I hope one of them resonates with you, whether it's the environmental impact, the energy consumption, or the amount of money that's wasted when we waste food as a community. This is where Food Rescue US comes into play. They are able to connect the abundance of healthy surplus food with needed partners. That being said, I'm going to turn it over to Emily and Susan to tell us more about how you can get involved rescuing food in our community.
Thank you, Amy. So I look at those stats that Amy just gave, and they are so dazzling when you think about it. And Emily and I were just in the desert too. So thinking about just all of the resources and the heat in the West right now, and the larger picture of how what we do fits into so many issues that are affecting the country at the moment and the world. The good news from my perspective is that I have a job that is really easy to sell, or the work we do is pretty easy to sell. It's kind of this amazing win-win-win, which is that people have excess food, and there are volunteers who want to make a difference, and there are people who need food. And the result is that we have this really pretty flexible and simple model for a way to get that food to people who need it. And essentially the picture really makes it clear how simple it is. We have local food donors who let us know that they have food that they would like to have rescued, that they are not going to use and they prefer not to have go in the landfill. We have local volunteers, our food rescuers, who sign up to pick up that food and deliver it directly to agencies that get that food to people who need it. So it's a pretty straightforward model all the way around. We can go to them, yeah. And Amy already gave you some of the idea of the impact. In 2020 alone, you can see that's a lot of meals, and it's a lot of food, and it's a lot of food picked up box by box, bag by bag. And it's only the tip of the iceberg, which is the amazing thing. Food Rescue experienced a sort of opportunity for growth and for a discovery of what more we could do during the COVID crisis. And a lot of what we found was that even as restaurants and grocery stores were shutting down or changing some of what they did, the need continued to grow. People needed the food, and there were still plenty of people who could find ways, who pushed to find what extra food they had, who contacted us as people became more aware of what was going on during the crisis. So despite the fact that a lot of our existing donors shut down either temporarily or some permanently, we continued to grow during the program during the crisis, and we've come to this point where we feel as if we're moving out of it, hopefully nationally, in a position to continue to grow. So many people became interested in volunteering. We got more contact with donors. So you can see that since January, we've added 13 new sources of food donations, and an astonishing 52,000 meals rescued from donors and delivered. And you can see in the photos the kind of range of things, everything from mangoes and limes and Brussels sprouts to quantities of milk, prepared food, bread products, bakery products, prepared food from both restaurants and from grocery stores. So it's been an interesting journey that we've had figuring out how best to use that food. A lot of our experience was during the past year and a half has been really focusing on, since we're rescuing this food, where can we get it where it is most used, so that there's no additional then turning that food into landfill after it's been delivered. And some of that has even involved figuring out how to pick up from pantries or shelters that have food that they've been donated that they then end up not being able to use, and then we take it somewhere else so that it does get used. Sorry, let me go to the next slide. An additional piece of what we've done from July to May, this past May, we were participating in the Farmers to Families Network, or the Farmers to Families program. And that was also an eye-opening experience for me and Emily and many of the existing rescuers already. In that for a while, there was an additional amount of food coming into Central Ohio pretty regularly as the nation and the state grappled with the idea that there were going to be a lot of people facing hunger. And as those supplies were coming in, which were brilliant, we moved in the direction of figuring out, all right, how do we reach the people who are less likely to be getting the food that's coming in? So we targeted in particular agencies serving older residents or people who are less likely to have transportation, less likely to be able to get to a pantry because of illness, vulnerability, or transportation issues, so that we could try to get food to the places it still wasn't filtering down to. And during that period, you can see there we are with a forklift. We got very familiar with forklifts and lifting boxes, but we moved a lot of boxes, and those are like 33 to 35 pound boxes. So if you ever want to test what an amazing volunteer corps we have, or what people can do when they need to do it, have people show up at a tractor trailer without a forklift or a pallet jack and see what happens, and then have them come back the next time, and you know you've got people who will be there for you when you need them. But we worked, ultimately we delivered to more than 150 locations in more than 34 zip codes in Central Ohio, and that was possible because we had volunteers arrive on site, pick up those boxes, load them into U-Hauls or load them into their vehicles, and deliver them directly to distribution sites. So it was a pretty amazing process. And along the way, we discovered, well, you can see the stat, but almost 75% of the sites we delivered to were new partnerships. So this was an experience for us, not only to recognize additional places that could work to help distribute food, but also to encounter a lot of the other people working in Central Ohio. Our partnership with SWACO has been amazing because we have come into contact with people tackling issues of waste on a much broader scale, and it puts this food rescue project into perspective. At the same time, working with Farmers to Families put our food rescue work in the perspective of other food rescue work, and we learned a great deal about how many people are working within their communities already, how many people were stepping up, but how many people have been doing this work all along, and really started to develop partnerships and collaborations that felt particularly meaningful going forward in terms of understanding how to address the issue as a community. We can go to the next slide. And that kind of takes us to what we're working towards. The two pillars of food rescue nationally are the food recovery and keeping food out of landfills. And as I said, those are really easy to sell. It's hard to argue with getting food to people who need it and keeping food out of landfills. So we're working obviously to maximize our opportunities for food recovery, to continue to build our donor network, to continue to find ways to get food that's needed and works best for our recipients. And we're continuing to try and reach communities that have less access to better known or other available sources of food, particularly those, as you can see, with limited transportation or physical mobility issues, recent immigrant populations, and those transitioning out of incarceration, homelessness, and addiction. We've been extraordinarily lucky to get to work with groups like Red Migrante and Food Soldier, MASH, and Welcome Home Foundation, groups that were already leading the way in terms of identifying particular groups that were particularly vulnerable, or could particularly use support, or had particular barriers to seeking that support, some including even attitudes towards food insecurity. And that added the other two pillars that Emily and I have personally inserted into RescueUS Columbus, which is that we really see our role as working to support and amplify the work of other Columbus-based organizations. And we really want to raise awareness about food justice issues and food-related issues and solutions. So we're really excited the opportunities that SWACO has given us. For instance, one of the things that the SWACO grant we received has done on a national level is allowed us to work more on developing the metrics for identifying what kind of food we're rescuing and how and where it's going, so that we're better able to track the data and target what we do. But it also allows us to communicate more with the other groups we're working with. And I'm going to turn it over to Emily, who's going to tell you more about how to be a food rescuer.
And Emily is going to unmute herself. There we go. So the other thing that I find really powerful about the food rescue process is that there are a lot of different ways to be involved with food rescue. And we're going to talk about a few of them, whether you are looking for a volunteer opportunity, or you know of a pocket of need or a pocket of potential wasted food that can be diverted, or you just want to know more and you want to help other people know more. Part of what we have been doing over the last year and a half and are continuing to do is try to figure out ways that our community can be sort of more clearly integrated into other parts of the Columbus community around social service and social justice, and also just being aware of how things work in the environment. So we're going to talk through a couple sort of logistical things in hopes that then if there are any questions, we can answer those. Okay, the first thing is how to sign up on our website. The website is listed there. It's beta.v3.foodrescue.us. And it is in beta, which means that sometimes sort of wonky things happen, but it's pretty seamless at this point. What you'll do is when you go to that website, a login page like you see here will pop up. It will ask you to confirm your email and then to confirm your phone number. A couple things that sometimes happen, so don't panic if this happens to you. The confirmation email often goes to people's junk folders. So if like 5 minutes have gone by and you haven't seen it, check your junk folder. I suspect that it is less often an issue now, but sometimes the confirmation text is also coming from a number that has been previously blocked. So same thing, if you're having trouble getting your phone number confirmed, check your blocked numbers and make sure that a number from Connecticut is able to reach you, because the food rescue number is in Connecticut. Once you have registered, and you'll see this on the next slide, it's really easy to go in and start rescuing food. We send out a welcome email once a week with sort of basic information, and the FAQ in the handouts is one of the things that we send out to all new rescuers. But once you sort of enter that initial dashboard, it's super easy to locate open rescues and sign up for them. But despite the ease, I will now talk you through it. What you see when you come to the dashboard are 3 tabs across the top of the screen. My FRUS is where rescues you've already completed will show up, or ones that you're scheduled to do. My rescues shows upcoming rescues mostly, but then the schedule, the one on the far right, is the one where you can see all open rescues in the next coming weeks. So the only rescues that you're going to see there are ones that haven't been claimed yet. They're the ones that are available for you to pick up. And so, for example, and one of these has already been claimed for today, but in the screenshot here, what you can see is, okay, today at 2:15, we are picking up from Mount Carmel, Grove City, and you can see the donor, you can see the receiver, it's going to Crossroads Community Harvest Food Pantry. You can see roughly what it is. And then there are two actions. One is I'll do it. That is, I happen to have some time today, this Tuesday. So I'm gonna click that, and that's the one that I'm gonna do. If you see that and are like, oh, I am in Grove City every Tuesday, roughly around 2 p.m., then you can click on adopt. And what that means is you're committing to doing that particular rescue every week. If you need to take a week off, it's easy to do that. But basically what that means is it will not show up as a routine opening for other people. And actually in the one that is directly below Mount Carmel, you can see what happens if someone has adopted a rescue and needed to let it go for one day. The person who usually does the Tuesday North Market Bridge Park had to release it for this particular Tuesday. So someone can say, I'll do it this week, but they're not able to sign up to do it every week because someone's already got that covered. It's really that easy. Now, after you have picked up the food from Mount Carmel or wherever, say the Starbucks in Bexley, what will show up under one of those first two tabs in the dashboard is a recent rescues list. And there, what we're going to ask you to do is click on yes, I did it, because you did. And that's the place where a new screen will show up, and it will ask you what kind of food you picked up. If there's certain units that are available, so you can say things like it was 3 boxes of produce, or it was 5 bags of breakfast sandwiches. There's also a space there to click no food available. So even if, and this is actually true for this one, even if there wasn't any food at a rescue, we still want people to say, yes, I did it, because you made that effort, you called or you showed up. And then you just click to say there was no food available, so that we are able to track how many of the rescues we're working with don't have food on a regular basis, because sometimes amounts change or volumes change. Okay, this is me.
Just a point there, when you click on a rescue to do it, the other thing that we didn't show you right here is that you get instructions that tell you here's the number to call, or here's where to park in the back, here's the door to go to, here's about the amount of food. So when you want to do a rescue, you're able to see more instructions about how that works.
This is maybe my favorite slide of what we have, in part because what it shows on the left side of the screen is most of the map of our donors, the Ds, and our receiving agencies, the Rs, across Franklin County and a little bit beyond. Part of what you see there is something that I'll talk about in a minute, which is that we have ample opportunity to add more donors and receiving agencies always. And that we've got a really extraordinary concentration, particularly in the downtown and adjoining areas. But especially as we sort of expand outward, part of what we are constantly working on is figuring out, when we've got a donor in Powell, how best to match a donation coming from Powell to somewhere that is roughly nearby, and that can still make use of the food. On the right side of the screen, what you see is what is not visible in that schedule, which is all of the rescues that are on our books for today. So when you looked at that schedule, it was the Mount Carmel Grove City and it was the North Market Bridge Park. And if you looked at that as a volunteer, you'd think, oh, there are only 2 possible volunteer opportunities for today. And that's true, but it is also the case that those are 2 out of a lot. I didn't even actually count all of these. A lot of rescues that are happening today. And Susan is absolutely right. So it generally is you want to click in the middle of the bar. So instead of I'll do it or adopt, if you click over to the left a little bit, that will have the sort of pop down information about addresses, phone numbers, roughly how big the donation is going to be. Because if you look at things like this, Whole Foods Easton tends to be a fairly big rescue. It's like a car full of stuff that we are rescuing from Easton. Locke's Bagel Shop is often paper shopping bags. So it's like 2 or 3 paper shopping bags. And Fox in the Snow is often a box of pastries. So the volume can vary pretty widely, and there's a category on the description of each rescue to explain roughly how much food we're talking about. Okay, so we talked a little bit about how to sign up as a volunteer. The other thing that we are always working with and on is encouraging folks to become food donors and to become agency partners. We know, and part of what Susan was talking about in terms of the Farmers to Families program, part of what we really became aware of were the number of small agencies that are not necessarily affiliated with food pantries already, but are 501c3s delivering food out to people in the community that are able to accept particular kinds of food donations. And part of what that means is that when someone comes to us and says, I don't know if we've got food you can use, but maybe here's what it would be, we're now really able to say, you think that that frozen cookie dough is not going to make a difference, but let me tell you about Hope Resource Center, which loves the frozen cookie dough in a way that like just is the best of things. So really all we need to know from anyone who is interested in starting to donate food or to receive food for their organization is what's listed here. Roughly when would be ideal for someone to pick up from or drop off at the location. If you've got a little bit of flexibility or can give us a couple different times, that would be great. The address that we're going to be picking up from or dropping off at, as well as any access instructions or suggestions. If there happens, for example, to be construction happening right outside your front door, it's really nice for us to be able to put that in the rescuer instructions so that the rescuer isn't thrown off when they show up. How often you anticipate having food to donate? This sometimes varies, particularly with new donors or receiving agencies. We can accommodate things like I could take food every other week, or I could donate food once a month. We are sometimes able also to do, when we're first working with a donor, we're able to do something like, how about you just text us for the first few weeks, just text us when you've got food. We'll send someone. After a few weeks, after you start seeing what that process feels like, maybe then we come back and come up with a more regular schedule. And that helps, I think, manage questions about how often a donor might have food, but also how much food. Because once you start realizing how much of your food really can go into recovery, things can change. So people who think that they are only going to be able to do a monthly donation start realizing biweekly works just fine, or something like this. And finally, one of the most important ones is the name, email, and contact number for someone who will be on site. That way we've got that information so we can contact you if there's a problem, but also we can pass that along to a volunteer in case something goes awry when they're on their way, or if they're running late, or if they're running early. My second favorite slide. These are a sample of some of our current community partners to give you some names to go with those dots on the map. We are working with community partners all over Columbus and beyond. Some of these are really established pantries. We've got NEMAP, All People's Fresh Market, the Vineyard Pantry, the Mash Pantry in Grove City. Sometimes we also are able to take stuff to the Mash Pantry in Delaware. Some of these are also not pantries per se, but are doing a lot of pantry related work, giving a lot of similar kinds of resources. Muslim Family Services is one. Chris has a particular sort of subset program that we work with where they are able to deliver food to families that they're working with. Feed and Read Ohio gets food and literacy materials out to families that need it. Crossroads, which is getting the Mount Carmel donation you saw before, does sort of family specific distributions, but also as part of their work, they go out and distribute food to the unhoused population nearby. So we try really hard to, and are continuing to try really hard to diversify the kinds of organizations we're working with, both because it matters and also because as we have different kinds of food donations coming available, we are able to match different kinds of donation with the needs of particular community partners. Muslim Family Services works a lot. It's a lot easier for us to give them either small amounts of refrigerated food or more shelf-stable food, whereas NEMAP has a bigger freezer. And so we're able to sort of personalize in that way. Okay, but also it is entirely possible that, especially during the summer months, it doesn't feel possible to jump in your car once or 3 times a week, or you are not in the food service industry and so are not sure about food donors or receiving agencies. We love just talking to people about food recovery through events like this. We have an occasional reading group where we look at videos or short articles about food waste and food recovery and talk to folks about that. We also have, and I was afraid that I'd gotten this wrong, I'm going to put in the chat, I got the Instagram handle wrong, which is awkward since I am one of the people who runs that. There it is. There's a dot missing in the Instagram handle. We are on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. That is one way to stay sort of aware of what we're doing and also to then spread the word to friends and family about the kinds of concerns that Food Rescue is grappling with. We certainly take financial donations. We do events, whether it's a reading group or I'm hoping going to be having a discussion group coming up about that Netflix series High on the Hog, which is looking at African American cuisine and thinking about intersections of food justice and other social justice questions and concerns. We also have started hosting a virtual event on Tuesdays, which is Eat Out of Your Pantry Day, where we are encouraging folks to make a meal out of what you have to hand in your cupboard or in your freezer, and show us what you made from what you just happen to have on hand, and also potentially to pair that practice with donating the cost of a meal you might have eaten out to a food pantry nearby. So thinking about eating out of your pantry both as a way to reduce your own household waste, but also then to pay forward, thinking about a pantry or an organization that you feel strongly about and supporting them so that other people can in fact eat out of that pantry. There are a lot of options.
All right, wonderful. So thank you for sharing that information with us, Emily and Susan. I'm going to open it up now to questions from the audience. I have a couple questions that have come in so far. If you are sitting with something, you're not sure exactly how the website works, you're not really sure how you would sign up if you were a food donor, just go ahead and type your question in now and we will be answering all those. One question I received from the audience was, is there a volunteer training session? Do you host those on a regular basis, or is there any training necessary to become a food rescuer? Emily or Susan?
I'm trying.
There you go, I got
there
you.
Okay. We do, one of the things that really helps is the FAQ that we attach that does cover a number of questions. As Emily discussed, the website is meant to be pretty user-friendly and pretty straightforward. The idea of Food Rescue came out of really, let's not make this too complicated. Let's create an app. Let's just allow, make this connection possible and people can do rescues as fit their schedule. But the truth is, some people want or need to have a little bit more discussion around that. We do host sort of office hours where we can talk about the technical stuff, and we do make our information available, text, email, so that if you have questions you can ask, or we can meet with you, show you online, show you in person now. And we also, wow, I just lost that thought. Emily, did you?
So we do Zoom office hours. We have absolutely met with people in parking lots or wherever to show how to work around something that is a problem. The FAQ is helpful. By all means, shoot us an email if you're flummoxed, and we can work through it. The frequently asked questions really are the questions that cause most trouble. We do also try, and I think we're hoping, especially as the summer goes on, to continue having opportunities for rescuers to come together a little bit and actually talk to each other and share best practices that way. So we've done office hours that are sort of how to approach a donor, or how to talk more about what we do to other people. So we have those kinds of events on a sort of sporadic basis. The ideal is that with the welcome email you get and or with this FAQ, you should be able to get started, but we are also super excited about having more of a conversation if and when that's needed.
It was the welcome email that I was trying to remember. So we do send that. We get notified when you sign up, and we send that out. And we're also working to get a list of pretty active volunteers who are willing to be mentors or willing to have conversations with people if you want to go along on a rescue to see what one looks like before you do it. So that'll soon be part of the program, so people can be paired up a little bit more if they're just want to know what it feels like before they do it.
That's great. Thank you. That's helpful to know. And then the other question that came in was, is there a minimum number of rescues a volunteer has to do a week or a month, or is it really just kind of up to the availability of the volunteer?
It is absolutely up to you. The great thing about the program is that we have people who adopt regular runs. They feel really strongly about them. They schedule their week around it. They develop those relationships, and it's wonderful. And we also have people who have very flexible work schedules or have childcare issues, and they're not sure when they're going to be able to do it. There might be teachers who are much more available in the summer than they are during the school year. And the program, part of this is that we want people to be able to participate to the level that they can. So be a part of the community, get our emails, talk to us about stuff, come to an event, learn more about food rescue, and maybe that's what someone could do right now. And it was certainly what people could do during COVID. A lot of people had concerns and not everyone was able to go out and rescue. That didn't mean they weren't part of the community, but we're here, to the degree that you want to participate or are able to participate. We want to offer as many ways as possible to be a part of the magic, because there's a lot of joy that comes from doing this kind of work in a lot of different ways, and we love being able to share that on different levels.
Yeah, fantastic. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. Another thing that we have started doing recently that I think has been quite helpful in terms of this sort of question about regularity or frequency. We have set up sort of on-call text chains so that if a rescuer signs up and is in Whitehall and says, I don't know that I can always check, that I'm always going to remember to check the website, but I'm willing to be sort of a last resort person, what we're then able to do is text a group and say, something has come up, there's a Blox Bagels donation that needs to get picked up this afternoon, is anyone free? And it doesn't happen that often, but what that means is that we've got the opportunity for people who want to be involved but aren't always sure what their availability is going to be, to have a sense of a sort of last minute, do you happen to have some time today or tomorrow? And that is another way to sort of welcome people into the process, even if more regular rescues don't feel as accessible.
And just another piece that I don't think we mentioned is that the system automatically sends out an email or text to people every night about 6 o'clock, I think, saying, we have unclaimed rescues for tomorrow, can you help? So even if you don't remember to check the website or that's not part of your routine, you do get a reminder email that says, here's some stuff, maybe you could do this.
Yes, thank you. That's helpful. And there was another question related to the type of car you need to have. I know you mentioned earlier that, you know, you can find out how much food each pickup has. So if it's a couple paper bags versus if it's a full car load, to help you determine if your car is going to be the appropriate size. But to me, it seems like a sedan would be appropriate size for most of these rescues. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I drive a Jetta and I can do a lot with a Jetta. The Whole Foods run, for instance, would be hard. I used to do that with a minivan. That worked a lot better with the back row seats out. But for most of the runs, it will work in a smaller car. And we do have people, Priuses are surprisingly roomy. And you can fit a lot. Occasionally, like a pickup from the convention center, when we have something like that, we'll either ask for more than one car, which is a way to break that up. But you don't, you know, an SUV will certainly work. You don't have to have one. Bagels pretty much fit in any car.
And then in terms of keeping the food cold during the hot summer months, is it necessary for the volunteer to bring a cooler or ice, or is that the expectation, or not so much?
I'll answer this one because it depends a little bit. No, as Emily suggested, we work really hard to pair donors and recipients so that the drive is short and you are meant to be picking the food up and taking it directly to the site. So our parameters are that we cannot pick up hot food from sites, but if they have been refrigerated or frozen or are shelf stable, then that food can be transported by us. There are a couple sites that have added their own parameters, and one of those are the Starbucks locations. They have further things in place where they want their food picked up in cooler bags with ice packs in them, and they want the temperature taken at pickup time and drop-off time, which makes sense in terms of what's being picked up and their concerns about making sure. So some of the runs will have notes that specify if that sort of thing is required. But generally speaking, the runs are short enough from recipient site, donor site to recipient site.
And we have the other thing about that. So the Starbucks is sort of a special case. We have bags and thermometers that have been provided to us by the Starbucks donation group. So we're not asking anybody to go out and acquire those supplies so much as when you're looking at the description of a rescue, if you see that it mentions something like, you must log the temperature, and you've got a question, or you know you don't have that that information or the materials to do that, that's a moment when you can absolutely reach out to us, and we'll help make sure that that makes sense and is doable.
Yeah, if anybody wants to adopt a Starbucks run, I would be delighted to get them a freezer bag and a thermometer. I've got those. But yeah, we don't ask you to buy equipment for this. So if there's something that's necessary for a run, and a couple of them, like we pick up from a bakery, Schneider's Bakery, and we use recyclable bins, or not recyclable bins, but reusable bins. So food safe bins to pick up there. When we can, we like to figure out if we can get reusable supplies for a site to prevent more waste with the pans that are disposable. And sometimes that will require a little bit more commitment in terms of knowing where to pick up the bins and where to drop them off. But we try to make that as simple as possible as well. But we're not asking any rescuer to supply those supplies.
Fantastic. Well, that looks like all the questions for today. And there were a couple of people who mentioned they had difficulties downloading the handouts. I have jotted your name down. I will send you an email here shortly after the webinar concludes with those handouts. And then for those of you who maybe you missed part of the beginning, you jumped on late, the recorded session will be emailed to everyone tomorrow. So that way you can rewatch something or catch yourself up to something that you missed in the beginning. This will also be available on SWACO's YouTube channel and on our SWACO's website for watching and sharing with other friends and family members who might be interested in volunteering or becoming a food donor. I want to thank our partners at Food Rescue US, Columbus. I want to thank you, Emily and Susan, for your time today. You went through on a very high level how each of us can sign up to make a difference, to help be the solution to rescue food and get it into the hands of hungry members of our community. Emily's email address is on this slide. If you have questions right away at the top of your minds about the program, about the Columbus chapter itself, please reach out to her. We're always here at SWACO, info@swaco.org. If you have questions about the waste stream, recycling, the Franklin County Sanitary Landfill, composting programs, we are your community resource when it comes to waste reduction, recycling, and safe disposal. Please keep your eyes out for future From Waste to Resource webinar series topics. Upcoming in July, we are going to be hosting one on how to go plastic free in July. So stay tuned for that information. And then every month we do host a Recycle Right how-to session every month at noon. I think the session in July is going to be on July 14th. If you're interested in signing up for one of those webinars to learn more about how to recycle right, please check out swaco.org. After this webinar concludes, you will receive a short survey. It's about 5 questions. We appreciate hearing your feedback, good or bad. If you have ideas for other topics that you want to hear about, we would love for you to share your insights. Thank you so much for joining us today, and everyone take care and stay safe. Bye-bye.